Welcome to Real Leadership, the podcast that cuts through the noise to focus on leaders who make, move, and process things in the real economy. Together, we'll discover the strategies and hard-earned lessons from pragmatic, gutsy leaders who operate in a world that is more steak than it is sizzle. Right here, we dive into their stories, challenges, and triumphs to go beneath the surface to the very heart of leadership in the real economy. I'm your host, Jim Weaver, Chief Operating Officer of the Ōnin Group, where we believe that real leadership does indeed matter. Let's go.
Accomplishing diversity, equality, and inclusion directives can be challenging. Excelsior Staffing, a certified MBE providing staffing solutions for light industrial sectors, has been helping companies like yours find success since 2007. Strengthen your diverse team with Excelsior. ExcelsiorStaffing.com.
Today I'm here with Michael Thomas, a respected leader in both the education and business communities. Michael is a Mississippi native who attended Jackson State University, where he received a bachelor's degree in accounting. Upon graduation, Michael served in the Mississippi State Auditor's Office before becoming Deputy Superintendent of the Jackson Public Schools. Michael then returned to his alma mater and became JSU's Vice President for Business and Finance. In 2015, the Systems Group offered Michael an opportunity he couldn't refuse. Since then, he served as the president of the conglomerate of companies that includes System Automotive Interiors, Systems Electrocoating, Systems Consultant Associates, and Systems Information Technology. These companies have an impressive portfolio of clients and hold the distinction of being a minority-owned and woman-owned business. Welcome, Michael.
Good to be here, Jim. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Good.
You have an interesting track record. You're a bit of a unicorn with 25, 30 years in the public sector and then making a left turn and going into private business, huh?
Yeah, it's one of my most interesting stories. I tell people about the jobs that I've had and how much I love them and how I got from one to the next.
I read when you became the VP of Business and Finance at JSU, you walked into a $1.2 million deficit in the reserves fund, and when you left 5 years later, you had $15 million in the reserves fund. Yeah. That's impressive. Tell us about that.
All right, so the details are kind of interesting. So I had spent most of my career in K-12, and probably transitioning from K-12 to university was almost like transitioning from education to manufacturing.
Really?
I had a bachelor's degree, but I had some really good experience. And, normally when you go to the university as vice president, they like to see that doctorate, by your name. Mm-hmm. So anyway, I had kind of run my course in K-12. I tell people I ran into a boss that I decided I couldn't work for. And I have really good leadership advice for people when they run into a boss that they have a hard time working for. If he doesn't look like he's leaving, you might need to leave. So I decided to retire in 2010, and I wasn't going to work anymore. And I was done. I was satisfied. I had a pretty decent retirement coming in, so I was done. 47 years old, I was retired. So what happened was I was sitting at home retired, bored to death because all my friends were at work. And while I was sitting at home, I got a call from a guy that was interim president at Jackson State University, and he said, "Hey, Michael, I need someone to work in this position as vice president of business and finance, and I know you're sitting at home, you're not doing anything, so are you interested?" So I launched into this thing saying, how much does it pay? So this is what he told me. He said, "Well, Mike, I can haggle with you over the salary." He said, "But I know my wife is a good friend of yours, and she told me that this is your dream job, that you wanted to go back to your alma mater and fix everything broken." And he said, "So I know I don't have to haggle with you. So he said it pays X, and I know you're gonna come and work for me. So it was literally
Wow.
He called me on June 30th, and he told me you need to report the first working day of July, and so I was ready to go. It was supposed to be a 6-month job. It turned into a 5-year job. But when I got there, University had a $1.2 million deficit. So I tell people, everybody who want to figure that out, start at zero and then start subtracting $1.2 million. That's where we started.
Yeah.
And but I, when I worked for the audit department, I really gained a lot of experience years ago. My first job out of Jackson State University, I gained a lot of experience in fixing problem financial systems. So literally, I left the audit department, 6 years, spent a lot of that time, with struggling school districts, hired by a struggling school district that had a $500,000 deficit. And over the next 2.5 years, I built that, and it was a small budget, $6 million. But I built that $500,000 deficit into a $240,000 surplus. I built it to $240,000, and our goal was to build it to a $500,000 surplus. Start off with a $500,000 deficit, build it to a $500,000 surplus. Anyway, while I was building toward that $500,000 surplus, I received a call from someone at Jackson Public Schools saying, hey. At the time, they were the largest school district in the state of Mississippi. Hey, we need a budget director. We never had one. And you've been recommended to apply for that position, which I applied for. And I got that position. And that was in 1994. I was hired by JPS. At the time, they had a $24 million surplus, but they were eating into that surplus to the tune of $6 million a year. And so, if you do the math, they got 4 years of overspending before they don't have a surplus anymore. So basically, I became budget director, and for the next 16 years, I kept them financially sound. Never had a financial crisis, and just gained a lot of experience because I went from budget director in 94 to CFO in 98 to deputy superintendent actually in 2002. And when I became deputy superintendent, I was over 8 departments: transportation, facilities, human resources, finance, food service, technology, campus police. So I had the gamut of all the operational areas that were not instruction but supported instruction. And so it just gave me a lot of experience in managing finances and creative financing, all kinds of things. So when I got to the university, I have this strategy that I employ everywhere I go. And my mentor calls it my proof of concept. I thought I was really good at what I did because I was in JPS, but I thought it was because I was there so long. So, you stay in a place so long, you should get better. But he said, you have a good system. And so when I got to Jackson State, I kind of employed that system. And my system is really looking at 3 things, the 3 Ps. I look at people, practices, and policies. And why they had a $1.2 million deficit. So I started attacking all those things that caused that deficit. And actually, we went from a $1.2 million deficit to a $15 million surplus in 3 years. 3 years, $15 million surplus. I think the first year we were somewhere around $5 million, second year, $8 million, third year, $15 million. And for all funds, we built them up to $32 million. And then we started making some investments in the campus. And by the time we were making these investments in the campus, people start thinking that you're a magician with this stuff, and they spend a lot more money than you want them to spend. So I was getting a little, tired of that. And I told my mentor, who was actually the guy who started the company that I'm president of, that I was thinking about leaving the university, and he said, well, what do you want to do? I said, well, I don't know exactly what I want to do, but whatever I do next is just going to be something, significant, right? So he said, well, talk to my daughter, because we've been having some conversations about you. And long story short, they made me an offer that I couldn't refuse. They said, hey, how about coming over and running our manufacturing operations? At the time, they had 2 manufacturing operations, Systems Electrocoating and Systems Automotive Interiors, both in Mississippi, and they had a consultancy. And so I said, okay, sure. So I came over. And since that...
Remind me the name of the founder.
Bill Cooley.
Okay.
And so what had happened was, as they say, when I was in JPS and I became deputy superintendent, I inherited 50 managers, 8 direct reports, 42 managers below them, and 2,200 people below them. So in my opinion, I needed to get really good at what we were doing in the district very fast. Because there's a whole lot that can go wrong with all those people.
Yeah.
So certainly. We started doing organizational improvement work. Literally, I told every one of those 8 direct reports, this is the way we're going to operate. We're going to become business focused in our operational department. That means customer service oriented and also effective and efficient in delivering services. And I said, we should get really, really good to the point where no business could come in and take over our operation. And I said, by the way, I'm going to be inviting businesses to come in to look at us as takeover opportunities. And I can't think of the name of the first. There's a very prominent name organization, and they actually come in and take over like maintenance and janitorial services. They came in about 2 or 3 years after we started doing this improvement work, because remember, it's all designed to have a business focus and a public entity, and that was the strategy. They came in and they made an assessment of our custodial area for all the schools. We had 58 schools and probably about 25 other department locations. Yeah. Anyway, they concluded that they could take over our operation, but they would have to hire, I want to say 50 custodians.
Wow.
But they commented that they had never seen buildings so clean. I said, well, look, why should I outsource if buildings are clean? And they would still have to spend more money, which the district would have to pay for in order to come in. So what I decided to do instead, when they talked about the need to add more custodians, I said, well, why don't I add equipment that would make the job of the custodians that I have easier. So we basically started purchasing. You remember those floor sweepers where the custodians go back and forth over the floor with the little circular?
Yep. Yes.
Hey, we started buying the equipment that they could ride up and down the hallway on, so they wouldn't have, less labor intensive, wouldn't need quite so many custodians because we got equipment in place, and that was the investment that we made. And so we never really had a company that could come in and take over our operation because we got really, really efficient and effective in what we did, and we added a customer service component. So all that conversation is said. When I started doing that, I decided at that point, look, I really need to get my leaders some leadership training. And so I actually hired systems consultants, associates, to come in and do leadership training for my 50 managers. And so every year after that, I would get them to come in, take these guys on a 2.5-day retreat, split the managers up 25-25 on it, and basically let system consultant and particularly Bill Cooley, who at that point was running the systems companies, he and a group that was a part of his group, they did the leadership training, and it was really, really good. And so I call him my mentor, but we never really sat down and said, hey, I want you to be my mentor or anything like that. Right. But, he just kind of took to me, and, when he had an opportunity, he'd invite me to lunch and we'd talk about different things. And so when I left the school system, proof of concept was, what could I carry that same success to the university? I did. And then the question was, okay, Michael, you've done it at the university. That's your proof of concept. Now, take the work that you've done, leadership development, process improvement, organization improvement, and now make our companies better. And oh, by the way, I want you to grow the company too.
Recruiting top talent is tough. Ōnin Staffing focuses on people, offering exceptional benefits to attract and retain dedicated workers. Partner with us for flexible, data-driven solutions. Visit ōninstaffing.com to learn more.
Well, it's interesting. You would think with that big a budget turnaround, you would have to kill a lot of sacred cows, and you might really tick a lot of people off.
Yes.
But it sounds like a lot of it, though, was just very positive. Well, I don't know. Did you have to do a lot of cow killing?
Well, yeah. Now remember, I look at people, I look at policies, and I look at practices. And I would say this, that organizations are very reluctant to change any of those things.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, I did my assessment of people, and I concluded that I had 4 top managers that I thought were not working in the best interest of the university, were probably contributing to the deficit that it had, and I couldn't keep going with them. So I did an assessment in I think the first 30 days I did that assessment of people, processes, and practices. And my first recommendation to the president, the interim president, was I need to terminate 4 people. So he was like, 4 people, why? I said, they're not good at their job and they're not good for the university. People kind of run up against the Peter principle sometimes. So I said,
Sure.
He said, well, how do you want to do it? I said, all in one day. I said, So get this story. So I decided to do this. Now, what I'm told after I did this, nobody had gotten fired like that at the university. And they said ever. People got moved, but they didn't get fired. Yeah. So anyway, so I did this, and believe it or not, the news media picked up on it. They named the people, the person over auxiliary enterprises, the food service director, the purchasing director, and then just went down this list, or terminated at JSU yesterday, and blah blah blah. So then I get a call from the commissioner of higher ed. He's like, "What's going on? I need you to come over to my office." Well, the first call, he called the president. And the president told me that the commissioner wanted to talk to me. So he told me to come over to his office. He said, "What is going on?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, the newspaper, you terminated 4 people at the university. I said, "Well, when I came on board, you told me I had carte blanche authority to fix every problem at the university." He said, "Yeah." He said, "But you the auxiliary enterprise, the food service director, the person." He said, "Somebody's stealing money." I said, "Look, I probably can't document what they've taken, if they've taken anything. All I'm saying is that they are contributing to the problem that's happened at the university with the deficit." I said, "That's very clear from what I've, gathered over the last 30 days. And I said, so going forward, if I'm going to fix every problem broken, I can't do it with these guys." So he said, "Well, okay, next time, just give me a heads up. I'd like to know these kind of things before they hit the papers." I said, "Okay, no problem." So anyway, that was a part of the start of fixing the problem. And then it was just practices, really small things that become big things. You're losing money in food service, so I got to figure out, why are you losing money in an auxiliary enterprise that should be generating revenue? They had lost $1 million a year for the 5 years before I got there. And the only thing I did there, I made an assessment of what was going on, and I figured out places that they were losing money, giving away meals, inventory coming up missing, those kind of things. Stuff started adding up. And
$1 million worth of that
right.
stuff.
So I outsourced it after a year. Everybody kept their jobs except, the person I got that I let go. Yeah. Those people, it was a private company, so those people that were on the state retirement system, they could stay in the state retirement system till they retired, and then they could come work for the private company. The university went from losing $2 million a year to $1 million a year to profiting $2.2 million a year.
Wow.
So yeah, it's really like overcoming a $3 million. That's like a $3 million overcoming. And then did some other things with grants. They were letting people stay on grants too long, not applying for money on the grants in time. Spending money on things you couldn't spend money on. So you plug up those holes, you eliminate those practices, and now you're making money from the grants as opposed to losing money.
This may dovetail into a question I had as I was thinking about our time together. We don't get many people who have the educational background that you have. Mm-hmm. What's your critique of, this may be a rabbit trail, but your critique of public school systems in the United States? Strengths, weaknesses, what we need to do to raise our game.
So I would tell you that seeing what happened in the school system while I was there showed me not only what things can go wrong, but what things can go very, very right. This is one of those hard things that I have conversation with some of my friends about, and we get into some really stiff battles, but I've actually worked there. So one of the things I tell folk is there's probably enough money in public education. There's probably not enough money management. And so when we start managing funds better, we start finding out that there was a lot more that we could do and much more toward. So my focus was to really become efficient and push as much money to the classroom as possible. All right?
Yes.
And then I made every department that I had focus on doing their job so well that the kids benefited ultimately from everything they did. So you don't just go and replace lighting. You improve lighting that makes it more conducive for kids to learn. You don't just change out HVAC systems. You look at the temperature in the classroom and you ensure the kids are not in an uncomfortable environment so they can learn. So we did some really creative things. We got really, really efficient. And so my commentary on public education is I think public education is very useful and necessary. But I think there needs to be greater accountability on the leaders that are over schools to make sure that they're doing everything in their power to cause learning to occur in classroom. And I don't think that that's happening by and large. I also think that the people in finance should have a greater responsibility of not just keeping up with, what's being spent and what comes in, but how efficiently things are done. So before I became CFO, I was budget director, so I could watch. Well, at one point, we purchased science equipment this is my classic example. We purchased science equipment for all the high school classrooms, right? Great thing, Labs, you could have labs, you buy the big tables, you got the beakers, you got the all the stuff you need. It's special equipment. Stuff cost me a fortune. All right? And I'm budget director, so I'm allocating money to it. Well, when I became CFO, one of the first requests that I got was, hey, we need science equipment at the high school. I said, whoa, no, you don't. I said, I just spent like $800,000. Now, this is 1998, so a long time ago. Yeah. $800,000 probably wouldn't go very far as it did back then.
Yeah.
But anyway, no, you don't need any more money. So the guy says, or the person that tells me this, he say, you need to come out and look at what they purchased. So I go out to the schools, and what they actually did, they purchased equipment that was too big for the classroom. In some cases, you got 3 tables in the classroom. You have no room for anything else. No teacher desk. It was really, honestly, Jim, it was tragic. So when I was in a position where I could make things different, I ensured that we purchased what was necessary and not anything excessive, that we made sure that if I bought middle school desks for students, that the students could actually fit in those desks, And, people don't think about that, but, don't buy elementary desks for middle school kids. They cannot get in there.
That's not gonna work.
And
Right.
and what'll happen is, since you bought it, you're not going to be able to send that back. And so you end up junking it if you don't have a place for it in elementary.
Yeah.
And so I'm telling you, when you start looking at waste that occurred, my goal was to not have situations where we had waste. Now, so my commentary is, I believe that just about, I think there are few school districts in the country that you can go to that have a really good system in place of ensuring that waste doesn't occur. Another small example is buying computers. Everybody thinks buying the computers is great. Well, you can't buy the computers today and then start training the teachers on how to use those computers in the classroom. Because by the time the teachers are ready to go, with maybe a year or so later, well, now that computer has a 4-year life. And so if you don't, and so I start pushing train people before the technology gets there. It's a simple kind of thing, but it keeps you from wasting money.
Yes.
And so there's just a lot of things that we could do that we don't do in education that I think could cause learning to occur. One more example. So I had really good superintendents, I would say, up until the last one. All right, so I'm not gonna give his name for fear to I'll besmirch his reputation as much as I want to do it. But anyway, but the ones before required me to know what was happening in the classroom. They had me in the meetings with principals, with instructional deputies, and so I had to know what was going on. And so one of the times I decided to go out and visit a school, principal said, "Hey, let me show you this classroom. We teach this teacher teaches every kid how to read by January." And it was like January, right? I said, so it doesn't matter who's in the room, because these classrooms are inclusive. You got exceptional ed students in the same class as regular kids. So she said she'll pass the book around. Every one of them will read. So it's like a kindergarten class. So I go in that kindergarten class, and that teacher passes that book around, and you can't tell the special ed kids from the non-special ed kids. It was great. So I said, fantastic. So every kindergarten teacher does the same thing. She said, no, just this one. I said, so the rest of them don't prepare their kids to read by January of their first year, of their kindergarten year? She said, well, no, not really. I said, why not? Why not duplicate this lady's success? She said, well, the other teachers, they're a little bit more experienced. I said, who cares? I said, what you're telling me is, if my child is unfortunate enough to be in their class, my child is probably not going to progress as well as if they're in this other teacher's class who gets her kids ready by January. And that was one of those stark kind of things that I don't think she had heard that question before. So that's the other thing. They don't duplicate successes well in public education, and they need to. And it's possible. We got a superintendent in place, and he made sure that happened, and it was one of the most progressive time periods that we had. So I was able to see what happens when you have effective leadership and when you don't have effective leadership, which is why I am just always excited about making good leaders. It's the answer.
Yes. Yeah. Tell us about today. So let's fast forward the systems group. So you pivot to the private sector. You kind of told that story how you made that jump. Tell us about the systems group, the group of companies, what you do for a living, how they interact with each other.
So the first company that Bill Cooley started, he started in 1977. This guy has a great background, former military, Air Force, degrees, doctorates. He had a chance to work on Wall Street, and he decided that he would not work on Wall Street, that he would be a dean of College of Business at a university. So he did that. He retired before 77, and he started System Consultants Associates, and it was really about supporting small businesses. And over time, he's done that, and he morphed that into putting together plans for, I think when Nissan came to Mississippi, he put together a proposal of how Nissan could select businesses, to provide services for them. And it was such a good plan that they asked him if he would take on one of those suppliers for Nissan. And it was an opportunity that he knew absolutely nothing about. He jumps in, he hires the right people, and that is Systems Electrocoating, built in 2001, started production in 2003, and we're in 20 years of supplying Nissan, and had the great experience of visiting the person who's over Nissan Canton in Mississippi, and saying, look, hey, it's a new guy. I said, look, I just want to sit down with you, talk to you about any problems that System Electrocoating may be causing you headaches, so I can work those things out. He said, well, look, he said, I wish every supplier was like Systems Electrocoating. You all are top notch. He said, you can come sit down with me, but we won't have any problems to talk about. So we do a lot of things to make sure that we're meeting the customer's needs and doing the best job internally and efficiently in an efficient way to get there. And so
explain to our listeners what Systems Electrocoating does. I know, but I don't think they'll know.
So Systems Electrocoating is we basically do a painting process called electrocoating, where we rust-proof metal parts. So I always tell people, if you remember those cars up north get all that salt down at the bottom and they start rusting out, the electrocoating process prevents that from happening, basically. And so we do that for Nissan, but we also do it for other suppliers as well. Our facility, I would say our facility is probably one of the best in the country, definitely in the Southeast. We've done business. We're currently doing parts for Mercedes, but actually for a company that is a supplier to Mercedes, and they get us to e-coat those parts for their EV battery covers. We do that, and we have other companies. We've done tools. We can electrocoat any metal part that any metal part. No aluminum at this point, but other metals. And we always tell folk, we can do it any color as long as it's black. So it's a black paint, but it's very effective in preventing corrosive. And so that was and we're tier 1 to Nissan with that, and achieving great success.
You know what's amazing to me? If anyone questions the value of a big OEM going into a market like that, I think about what it looked like between Madison and Canton back in 2000 versus what it looks like today. All the shops and restaurants and new housing and the impact that plant and the suppliers, the ripple effect of that's just been unbelievable. Yeah,
it's actually incredible. I wish more people understood that impact. Unfortunately, there's always this narrative out there of the bad capitalist, right? You got Nissan to come in and get these tax incentives and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is Nissan comes in, they employ a ton of people. These are really good jobs. For Mississippi, very good, high-paying jobs. Teaching skills that probably never would have been taught in the state unless they came. And then the number of suppliers that have to be in Mississippi because they're supplying Nissan. And the model for Nissan and Toyota, it's a just-in-time kind of product. So they're not sitting around here trying to keep a bunch of inventory. So you got to have those suppliers relatively close to supply them. And those suppliers are coming to Mississippi, employing more people, developing more skills. It's been an incredible boom for the economy of Mississippi. And I really feel like folks don't have the full story. And they don't know also how much energy these companies put into being good community companies too, and doing things in the community. They just, they just don't know.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the other companies in your group.
All right. So when I came to the company in 2015, Bill Cooley, who had started the electrocoating company and the consultancy, had turned the company over to his daughter, Toni Cooley. Great boss. She's the owner and CEO of Systems Group. And so she had turned the consultancy and systems electrocoating over to Bill Cooley. Bill Cooley had turned that over to her, 7 years before. So what had happened for them was Toyota had looked at their success with Nissan and said, hey, we'd like for you to do seat assembly for us for the Toyota Mississippi plant. And so Systems Automotive Interiors was created and founded by Toni Cooley. And so we do the seat assembly for all the seats that are placed in Toyota Corollas for the entire country. So I tell people, if you're sitting in a Toyota Corolla that was built since 2011, you're sitting in seats that were made in our plant. And like you said, we're minority owned and we're woman owned, and we do really great work, and we're getting really good at what we do. And so because of our success there, when Toyota and Mazda decided that they were going to form a partnership in Huntsville, Alabama, they asked us to come over and do the seat assembly for both the Toyota vehicle, which is the Toyota Corolla Cross, and also the Mazda vehicle, which is the Mazda CX-50. So in Mississippi, if you look at the max production number, we're somewhere around 240. We can produce somewhere around 140,000 sets of seats per year for the Corolla at full production, 140, 145. Over in Huntsville, Alabama, we're set with a max production at full production, 150,000 per vehicle. So much larger operation. I think we're at our max number here. We're right at 206 employees in Huntsville, 143 in Tupelo at our SAI. And our plant in Huntsville is called Systems Automotive Interiors, Alabama. So we just kind of added Alabama to it. And then, so we have 143 at Tupelo, and 83 at the electrocoating. And then our consultancy, we actually kind of staff up based on the projects that we have currently. In the consultancy, the ongoing contract that we have is we have a contract to do supportive services for the Mississippi Department of Transportation. And so our responsibility there is to ensure that the MDOT meets their federal spend requirement for DBE participation on all those federal dollars that go into roads. And so we've been doing that for the past 12, 13 years. And we're really good at that too. So,
Yeah. I understand you've got some interesting things cooking on the consultancy. You might have an interesting meeting later on this week. Yeah, we were fortunate to apply for a capital readiness grant, and everything that we've heard, particularly with this meeting that we've been asked to attend, says that we've gotten that grant. But basically, that grant, the grant that we apply for and looks like we're going to get, is designed to take those same small businesses that we've been working with and some others, and basically prepare them in such a way that they'll be able to get bonded or be able to get capital for their business operations. So helping small business, disadvantaged businesses to get capital or be ready for any kind of capital opportunity if they make the request. And so there's a special meeting that the Vice President is having associated with those capital readiness funds. That the Vice President Kamala Harris.
Yeah, exactly.
That Vice President.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so I called my wife and I said, hey, looks like I might get a chance to, be in a meeting with the vice president. She said, well, I'm going to give you this book. I want you to try to get her to sign it. I said, well, I don't know if that's going to be possible, but, give me the book anyway. I don't know if she's going to be doing book signing.
Wow.
So anyway, it's a pretty good opportunity. She, wants to talk to us about how we're going to use those funds, and we have a really good plan for it.
Yeah, good. When you look at, just to promote your employer brand a little bit, when you look at your most tenured employees, you're a major employer. Why do you think those tenured folks stick around with your company?
Well, that was the other thing. When I was in the school system, we at different points we grew in our understanding of what we needed to do to be a better entity. And one of the things that we looked at was related to the top reason that people leave companies or organizations. And so at the time they say, well, what's the top reason? What people think was money. People leave most people leave companies for money. The reality is that most people leave companies because they don't feel appreciated. And who are the people and the organizations that are vested with the responsibility of making people feel appreciated? Managers, supervisors, leaders. And so when I came to systems, I carried, and even when I left, while I was at Jackson Public Schools, when I went to Jackson State, and when I came to systems, I was focused on the same thing. Let's figure out who our customers are, and let's give them the best service possible or products possible. But internally, let's treat our team members, our employees, with dignity and respect. Let's make the workplace a place where they know that they're going to be treated well when they come into the organization. They're going to work. We're going to require everybody to do the job that they're tasked to do. But we're going to treat them with dignity and respect. We're not going to embarrass them. We're not going to cuss them out. We're not going to embarrass them in front of their peers. We're going to coach them and help them get better. But we're going to create an organization that people actually want to work for. Now, everybody knows that I've been singing that song since I came into system companies. And I think they were singing it before, but it's just one of those things that I focus on it, and I start training managers to think that way too. I have a leadership series that I carry every manager through. It's based on a book called Monday Morning Leadership, 8 lessons that every manager should know. And in that series, when I teach those classes to every manager in the organization, it's really about you're the person that is the chief reason that someone will leave or stay in our company. I said, so don't be the person that runs them off. Be the person that does everything in your power to keep them in place. Because if they're a good worker, it's a whole lot harder to find another good one. Than you would believe. So don't let them walk out the door easily. And that's kind of what I preach all the time. Yeah.
Well, Michael, I feel like we could talk for hours here, but we're coming up on time. How can folks find out more about your company?
So,
what's the best way for them to do that?
We have, they could call me. I put my number on our website, but the umbrella company is System Companies. So if they go on the internet at www.systemscompanies.com, they will find all our companies there, and every company is basically set up a certain way. If you look at the acronym for our name, SEC, Systems Electrocoding, it's sec-ms.com, SAI, Systems Automotive Interiors, SAI-ms.com if they want to just go there. But if they want to get to all the companies, Systems Companies, www.systemscompanies.com.
We'll put that in the show notes as well so people can get that easily. Well, Michael, thank you so much. You're doing great work over there. What an interesting career you've had. It's nice to connect this way. We appreciate it.
It's been fun, Jim. Thanks a lot. Appreciate the invitation.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Until next time, keep it real. Thank you for listening. This podcast was powered by Ōnin. a family of staffing companies providing real staffing solutions to manufacturing, logistics, and food processing companies across the United States of America. To get in touch or learn more about partnering with an Ōnin Group company, visit us at www.oningroup.com. Thanks for tuning in. Until next time.